Good morning, guys. This message is specifically, well, this video is specifically for Lucy, but really anybody. But Lucy, thank you for asking. This relates to the Chapter 8 test form G, which we are using as our practice test to make sure that we're ready for the Chapter 8 actual test. So we have these two questions here, 9 and 10, that are giving you a little bit of trouble. So I actually went ahead and put those over here on some graph paper. So 9 asks us, what's the single transformation that will essentially provide us these two transformations together, the composition of these two, and then 10 does the same thing with a translation and a reflection. So we know that the capital R stands for a reflection, and then the subscript would be what we're reflecting over, same thing here. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually set up those lines, two vertical lines at x equals 1 and x equals 6. So if you're doing this on your own, go ahead and on your graph create those two lines at x is 1 and x is 6. I'm going to pause the video while I do that. Alright, so we now have our two lines at x equals 1 and x equals 6, but the question up here actually becomes a reflection across the line of x equals 1 or a reflection across the line x equals 6. To what, though? What is that actually happening to? So we have to provide a point or a shape or something that this will actually relate to. So let's just choose some kind of point. And honestly, the easiest point will just be the origin. So let's say if I take the origin point and I reflect it across the line x equals 1, well, however far it goes to get to that line x equals 1 is how far it's going to go on the opposite side of that. So we would get that my reflection point will be right here at 2, 0. But then I have to reflect that point across the line x equals 6. So we count up there are 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces between there. So I go another 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces out here. And since we know that was 6, this is now going to be at the point 10, 0. So the question would be to get from the original origin point of 0, 0, what would take us to this point out here? Now there are a few different options for how we're going to write this. The test specifically asked a single transformation rule. So it does not have to be a translation or a reflection specifically. It could be. We want one single rule. So the objective for you now is to write one rule to make that happen. Well, I could just say from 0, 0 to 10, 0, that is a translation. 10 added to the x and 0 added to the y. So that's one option that I could use there. And there's actually a few more options. I'm not going to give you all of these, so I'm going to leave it open to see if you decide to get creative about this. I'm going to pause the video, do a little bit of resetting for number 10, and then we'll be back with number 10. So one thing that I want to make sure I clarify is the operation or the modification or whatever you call that, the transformation closest to the value or to the point. So we would out here be saying some point or some shape. So we would maybe say point A or point B or something. This is going to happen before this happens, because this is saying reflect across the line y equals 2 to the translation 1 up of the point A. So we want to be very clear. We work right to left when we're doing compositions of transformations. So here on my graph paper, I kind of gave you the example of what might steer you wrong. A lot of people will be tempted to draw a vertical line when they see this, although that is incorrect because this vertical line shows that every single x value there is 2, whereas this horizontal line shows that every single y value is 2. So be very careful. This reflection is going to happen across that horizontal line. So again, we need some point to start with. And I'm going to grab a darker blue here. So we need a point to start that we're going to translate 1 up, and then we're going to reflect across that line. So let's just choose some random point based off what I have available here. Let's just do, we want to be able to go 1 up. Let's do -3, -3. Now some of you might not like that I'm working with negatives, and that's okay. You can work with positives if you would like. But when I translate 1 up, when I do that t0, 1, that's going to bring me to this point. And that point is going to be my initial prime point for A. So we call that A prime, a single prime. And that is now at the point -3, -2. Now we have to do that reflection across the line y equals 2. And again, to reflect, we count how far is it to get to that line. Well, it's a distance of 4 from that prime point. So I'm going to go a distance of 4 up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to get me my a double prime. And that point is actually now at -3 positive 6. So the question now becomes, what single transformation would take you from your point of -3 and -3 to the point -3, 6? And again, there's a couple different options. I'm going to pause the video while I let you think for a second. You should pause the video also, and then I will come back and give you one of those options that we can use. Alright, so on number 9, I had given you the answer here for the composition, saying that we could just do a translation 10 to the right. So let's go ahead and make this one a reflection. So number 10, we're going to answer with a reflection. I'm kind of running out of colors, so hopefully, yeah, this is like peachy compared to that pink. So 10, we went from this point here of -3, -3 to this point, -3, 6. Now the gap between them is only y values because the x values have stayed the same. So if I look at this gap between these points, I find out that that gap is 9. So if I wanted to do this as a reflection, I want to make sure that that reflection axis, or the axis of reflection, is halfway between those two. So if I went from -3 up to -6, halfway of 9 is going to be 4.5. So I divide that by 2, and I figure out that 4.5 away from either of these points is going to be that axis of reflection. So if I go 4.5 up from the -3, 1, 2, 3, 4.5, where is that relative to everything else? Well, my origin point is right there, so that would be at a y value of 1.5. So we can then draw that axis of reflection right here. And that is at y equals 1.5. So we can then answer 10 by saying we are going to reflect over the line y equals 1.5, and that would get us from our original point of -3, -3 to our double prime point of -3, 6, which now that we've combined these and only made it one transformation, if I redid this with a point B, I would actually only end up at a point B prime, because now there's only one modification or one transformation happening to my points, as opposed to the two transformations that we had over here. So hopefully that helps you out on problems 9 to 10. If you have any other questions from the Chapter 8 test, please let me know, and I will get videos made for an answer.